like to stand, we'll sing our call to worship.
Good morning. Thank you for this beautiful day today. It's a wonderful spring day. I did not have to go out and spread salt this morning to pick up the ice, so I'm particularly appreciative of that fact. My name is Bob White, and I am very, very happy to be here to serve as your worship assistant on this Easter morning. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. Deciding to share part of your Easter morning with us, and for that we are both grateful and blessed to have you here. Special thank you to Joe Kelly and Linda. Joe is our speaker once again today. And a very special thank you to anyone who might be here for your first time. If you feel comfortable doing so, raise your hand, and we have some packets that the ushers will distribute. If not, they'll be available after the service as well. So please feel free to stop by the table and pick one up, and have a lot of information about Unity and our family. Let's go ahead and start with our opening prayer. Oh, well, before I get to that, we have to get back to the old routine where we take a few minutes and greet everybody who is here. Just be aware of people might not want hugs yet or not, but let's greet one another this morning, please. Good morning again.
Good, Bob.
Yeah.
I get two hugs. I made you wear a tie today.
Did you? Okay. Well, I've never officially met you, Bob.
Hi, Bob. I'm Nancy.
Nancy, congratulations to both of you. So happy for the two of you. This is a great tradition, and I'm glad we brought it back. If we all can settle in for just a second for our opening prayer. Take a breath and just feel the presence of Spirit that's within us, in this room, surrounding us, and going out from this place into the universe. And we are very blessed to be together today, to share our love, our compassion, our strength, and our wholeness with one another, with our community, and with the world. On this joyous day, we are very grateful to Spirit for its presence, for its love and protection, and we can feel that every day. So it is, amen.
Affirmation.
I don't want to say I get tied up in this stuff, but I've got it in great, big, bold, colored letters on here, and I still walk over there to sit down. So let's share our statement of unity, our affirmation for the day together. On this day, I name and claim my abundance of every good thing needed in my life.
If you'd like to stand, we'll sing our first traditional Easter song for all you Lutherans out there, former Lutherans, like me. Presbyterian order. Praise the Lord is risen today. Hallelujah. Sons of man and angels say, Hallelujah. Raise your joys and triumph high. Hallelujah. Sing ye heavens and earth reply. Hallelujah. No more thought of dark and gloom. Hallelujah. No more thought of death and doom. Hallelujah. To the heavens and on the lands. Hallelujah. Let our souls extend the hands. Hallelujah. My dazzling radiant rays. Hallelujah. Shine illuminate our days. Hallelujah. Constantly the truth will dawn. Hallelujah. Now arise, ascend, shine on. Hallelujah.
We have just a couple of announcements this morning to share with you. The rest of our guest speakers after Joe Kelly today will be next week with Reverend Kit Holmes. Will be returning after quite an extended absence. I am looking forward to seeing her and surrounding her with a whole bunch of hugs if she's able to accept them at that point. So it'll be great to have Kit back. And finally, on April 30th, ordained Buddhist monk Jill Donberg will join us for the very first time, and I look forward to a wonderful lesson at that point as well. The only other announcement is the Compassionate Choices Potluck, which will be held on Sunday the 23rd. It'll be offered by the Compassionate Choices group, and they'll be offering a plant-based potluck in celebration of Earth Day on that day. There's a sign-up sheet in the lobby if anyone's interested in bringing any vegan dish to pass. Everybody is welcome to enjoy the food that reduces our carbon input and is kinder to all. If you have any questions or like recipe suggestions, please feel free to see McRae, Jill Zofia, or Marianne Kachalia. And even though I'm not a vegan, the food is extremely good. So if you haven't tried it before, this is a great opportunity. And if you have tried it before, I'll be there in line with you.
You can remain seated for the song.
This is now our time of prayer and meditation. And as the lights are dimmed, I invite you all to become comfortable in your seats. Rest your hands in your lap if you like. Close your eyes if you would like to do so. And take one or two deep, relaxing breaths. And as you feel yourself becoming more relaxed, gently let any thoughts of the day, any concerns or cares you might have, slowly drift away. See them drifting away as you do the clouds in the sky. And from that place, know that God is with us. In the Christian traditions, today is a joyous day which marks the end of Holy Week. A week in which Jesus experienced many of the emotions and feelings that are available to humans, to us. From the adoration that he felt riding into Jerusalem on Palm Sunday, to the last dinner he had with his disciples, where he blesses them and knows what is to come. to the betrayal of him by someone who loved him, and to his final physical death with the crucifixion. We also feel many of those same feelings: despair, hopelessness, betrayal. But today is a joyous day. This is the day of the resurrection, of the renewal, of a new beginning, and of us knowing that through the Christ presence, we can rise above anything that occurs to us or happens to us in this physical body. We can feel the divinity that we are, the presence of that Christ, and know that even though we have seen physical death among friends, families, and eventually to ourselves, who and what we really are is eternal spiritual beings. That we will continue to exist in some consciousness even after leaving this plane. And we will know and feel the absolute love, caring, and protection that is with us even now, even when we are at our deepest place and may not know it's there. It is. So let's just take a moment in the silence to feel that reality, to know that we are spiritual beings having a human experience, and know that we are divine and our spirits are eternal in the silence. And as we return back to this space and time, we can express the joy that we feel, the knowledge that we have, that all is well with God. All things are possible. And that is expressed through us, or can be expressed through us by God, each and every day. And so it is, amen. Do you guys have any idea how good you sound together? That is phenomenal. Please join with me in welcoming one of our good friends here at Unity, Joe Kelly.
So I was sort of caught by surprise when it's time to stand up and speak. Thank you. Thank you for inviting us back. That means a lot, to be invited back. You know, to be invited once, that's a lot. But it's pretty special to be invited back. And when the invitation came, there were all kinds of things, you know, that run through my head that I want to share. And this morning when I got up, my mind went blank. You know, but I think that that's not an uncommon thing. And I think it's a gift to, one, have the opportunity to consider what one might say that could possibly be meaningful. By the way, this morning when I got up, and I'm an early riser, our adult son was up. That's a rarity on the weekend. He's a truck driver during the week, and on Saturday and Sunday he sleeps till 1. But he was awake, he was up, and he was sitting in the living room, and when I came in the living room, he said, "You know, Dad," and you catch the tone there, you know, "Dad." You know, I was driving the other day, sort of daydreaming, and looked off to the side, and suddenly your picture appeared on this board that's outside, and it almost caused a wreck. He said, "I almost drove into a tree." What kind of place is going to have your picture on? And you know, I was sympathetic, but at the same time, it's, you know, parents, all of you who are parents, either have experienced similar things with your children or will. You know, what kind of place would have your picture on the outside? And then he said, "What kind of church is that?" I said, "Well, why don't you come and see?" He said, "Oh, I'm not that far yet." So, especially to listen to you. You know. What I'm going to talk about today is the resurrection. Okay, surprise, surprise. The resurrection. But those of you who've heard me talk before, you know that I'm not going to tell you what to believe. That's not something that I believe is appropriate for me to tell anybody else what to believe. So I'm going to tell you how the resurrection came to be understood for me in my life. Now that's, so then let me follow that up with that's not because I think I'm special, because I don't. I don't think I'm special at all. I'm thrilled when somebody asks me to speak, but I don't think they're asking me to speak because I'm special. I think they're asking me to speak because somewhere something communicated to them that I'm willing Okay? And that's really true. There is a way, of course, each person in this room, each and every person in this room is capable of sharing their truth. And I would encourage you, if and when somebody asks you to do that, to do it. Even when you think that your truth is nothing special. Because we all sort of do that, you know. But the fact is that if there is a God, or if there is a spirit, or whatever language we want to use, and that always stops me when I think like whatever language we're going to use, because I remember, you know, in the early days of my spiritual journey, I'm a tree pruner. That's what I did. And I worked with a guy named Glenn. And Glenn was one of my least favorite working characters because you almost needed a gun to get Glenn to work. But he was one of my favorite characters because he had a way of saying things. And, you know, and I've talked before, I think about Glenn. And Glenn, one day we're cutting trees and finally everybody's working, and suddenly Glenn lays down his chainsaw and he's walking off. I said, Glenn, where are you going? He said, I'm going to go talk to the big one. The big one. I said, what are you going to talk to the big one about? He says, I'm going to go talk to the big one about that woman I live with. She's driving me nuts. So Glenn goes off. So Glenn comes back. So I said, Glenn, what'd the big one say? He's, told me to get back to work. I was lucky to have a woman live with me at all. And you know, Glenn was connected to the big one. Glenn was, in his way, in his language, and however that worked for him, which was mostly four-letter words. You know, I cleaned it up a bit this morning. There's a young person sitting back here. that Glenn communicated with a power that he sensed was there and worked at communicating with it. And he did it in a way that a lot of people would be uncomfortable with. But it was real for him. And that's what matters. So when my son asked me a little later this morning, you know, what are you going to talk about today, Dad? I said, I'm going to do my best to make it real. In how it is for me. So I'm not going to quote from the book or any of the books. I'm going to share an experience that has been very powerful in our lives. And always when I speak, and I know I've said that here before, but and you people are wonderful, you know. I really love how you include Linda in all this. Linda is not a person who is comfortable speaking out loud in front of people. Although at the same time, she's one of the most courageous humans I've ever met. Okay? But speaking out in front of a group is not her way. At the same time, she's every bit a part of everything that I communicate, here and every place else. You know, Linda saved my life in the quality of her love. And she saves the life of our son virtually every day because he lives with us because of her unconditional love With me, he'd be out on his own, you know. But we don't get to make those kind of decisions when we're partners. And so everything that I say today are things that Linda and I have discussed over and over, you know. And it was from a discussion we had earlier in the week that I'm going to share an experience. And the experience comes from rather early in my spiritual walk. It's a lot later than it should have come. You know, would have been helpful had I come alive in my spiritual walk way earlier in my life, but I didn't. And when I did start the process of growing and maturing and softening, both Linda and I at the time were working at Munson. Now, this was roughly 1985, somewhere around there, mid-80s. Linda was a nurse. I was a therapist working in the alcohol drug unit. This was the time of the beginning of AIDS. Okay. And AIDS was in the news. AIDS was not particularly well understood. AIDS was very similar to what COVID was 3 or 4 years ago. People had sort of heard of it. It was the most terrifying thing anybody had heard in a long time. We didn't understand exactly how it worked. It's, if you got it, you died. And they weren't exactly sure how people got it. So that was in the news. We were on our way home from work. We were driving together. And so I worked in the alcohol drug unit, which was a separate unit on a hill behind the hospital. Linda worked in primary care in the heart unit in the big building. And Linda said, you know, there's a lot of turmoil among the staff at Munson, and that the stuff with AIDS, and we've never had a patient with AIDS in the hospital. Nobody knows what to do if we get a patient with AIDS, but it's going to happen. At some point, it's going to happen. She said a lot of people are saying they're going to refuse to treat because of terror and being frightened. And she said, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I said, well, I guess we ought to think about it, pray about it, talk about it, and decide, because it could happen for either one of us. And at the time, I am well aware that in my head, if it was going to occur, it was going to occur more likely in her unit than in mine. So my part of this was, you know, pretty superficial. I'm just trying to be a half-decent husband, you know. So let's talk about it. We can talk about it, you know. And so over the week at different times, as we drove back and forth, we talked about the fears. We talked about the information that was about, that we talked about everything we'd heard. We talked about all of this stuff. And towards, it is roughly a week, something like that. We're driving back home one night, And Linda said, and I remember exactly where we were in the vehicle when she said it. And it just sort of came out of nowhere. She said, well, if it occurs on our unit, I'm going to participate in the treatment. I'm going to be a part of this. And, my heart sank because that's not what I wanted to hear. And I'm scared for us. I'm scared for the kids. I'm scared, But I also know there is no arguing Linda out of something when she's made a decision. And her parents learned that when she decided she was going to marry me. I was their nightmare. Truly, because 4 days, I think it was, before our wedding, the favorite brother-in-law of the whole family drove 50 or 60 miles to get her parents and to come to where we lived and take Linda home, hoping to cut off the wedding. And the very next day, Linda was back. And I said, what happened? She said, it doesn't matter. We're getting married on Saturday. And we did, And so when Linda said, whatever happens, I'm going to be a part of the treatment, I knew she had made her decision. Roughly, a month later, I get called into the department head's office in the alcohol drug unit. And he's there with the clinical supervisor. And they say to me, well, it's happened. I said, what's happened? It's like some terrible things, And I said, we have the first AIDS patient in the hospital. And he's, a guy with a history he was a drug dealer in Nevada, in Las Vegas, and a needle heroin user, and he's here, and we're asking you to take him in your treatment group. And I thought, oh, wow. I said, how's it going to work? He said, well, we're not going to tell anybody else other than the nurses that we're going to keep him quarantined except when he's in group. And, all of this kind of stuff. We're not going to tell any other patients. We're not going to do anything. I said, but what happened? I mean, it's absolutely going to happen. It'll come out at some point. And what do we do then? Because this whole place could empty in an hour. And they said, well, the only thing we can do is deal with it when it happens. And are you willing? I said, well, because Linda said I'm going to treat, I'm kind of stuck. I'm thinking, ooh, this is a really, really bad idea. And I didn't believe it was going to happen here. So I said, real brave, well, okay. We'll do it. We'll do it one day at a time, talking 12-step language. We'll do it one day at a time. And so we start. It goes about a week. And prior to that, before the guy joined the group, I sat down with him in my office. And I said, I have no idea how this is going to work. You know, I said, so here we made some preliminary kinds of things. We're not going to be hugging in the hallway of people with people. We're going to, nurses are going to make sure the room is sterilized. You're going to need to be careful who you touch, when you touch, et cetera, et cetera. And the guy said, what happens if they discover that I have AIDS and they leave? I said, well, it could come down to only two people in this building, you and me. I said, but it is going to be you and me. And so, because I'm stuck, Linda made the decision. I can't go against Linda. So it goes about a week, and we're in what in the unit in those days was called the small group. So it's myself as the therapist and 12 or 13 clients, and we're sitting in a circle. And suddenly, somebody in the group says, so, what's going on with, and they mention this guy's first name. And I said, and he freezes. And I said, what do you mean? They said, look, now there's a couple of them talking, and they're kind of irritated. They say, we know something's going on because nurses are real nervous around him, and he doesn't see, because this is a room full of drug addicts and alcoholics, bikers and ex-cons and et cetera. He's not the scariest person here. Why are people treating him like he's some terrible, somebody to be really frightened of? And he's frozen and I'm frozen. And I look over at him and he looks at me and I did this. It's up to you. What do you want to do with this? And so the guy says, I have AIDS. I'm going to die. And the only chance I have to extend my time before death is to be drug and alcohol free. The only way I can do that is to complete this program and participate in the 12-step. It's the only way. I've never been successful before. I want a chance to live. And I said the program had made a decision to keep this secret on the hopes that we could go through this. And the people sat, the clients, the patients, sat silent for what felt like an awfully long time. Now I can't, as I go on, I'm going to have tears. It's all those years ago, but it's still as real today as it was that day. Suddenly, it was a young woman who got up from her chair, walked across the room, and she took this guy in her arms. And then there was this big, mean-looking biker. Got up out of the chair, went across the room, took both of them in his arms. And then every patient in the room got up and walked across the room and wrapped their arms around. And I'm sitting and I'm watching this. And then, one by one, they came back and sat down and looked at me and said, "What are we waiting for? Let's have group." And in my mind, there's this voice that said, "This is the resurrection. This is the resurrection." It's when people act out of the norm, out of their belief system, out of their fear, legitimate fear, out of their terror, to step across the boundary in love and touch the untouchable and love the unlovable and the lost and lonely and the dying and afraid. And you know, that whole group graduated. That whole group went on into recovery. And a number of years later, that man died of AIDS. And I did his funeral. And that whole group was there. And so, what, in my view of the resurrection, is that it occurs in any given day, in any given place, all over the world, when individuals, common, everyday, nothing special about them, individuals, act in love to those that are untouchable and different. And scary. And alone. And I know you do that because I see it.
I don't often make a statement of disagreeing with someone who's a speaker, but I do have to disagree with you. You are very, very special. Both you and Linda, and thank you. This is now our time of offering, a time to share our financial gifts with the ministry. As children of a loving God, we live in the light of abundance, deeply grateful for all that has been given and all that is to come. We embrace the good that God provides with joy and thanksgiving. And the words to our prosperity blessing are on the screen. Together, divine love through me blesses and multiplies all that I have, all that I give, and all that I receive. Thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you. And so it is. As a kid, Easter to me was jelly beans, chocolate rabbits, and little toys in my basket. This is what Easter's for me today. I will remember this day, this Easter, forever. The joy that we have felt here this morning with Joe and Linda and with each of us here. I just want to say thank you for that. Once again, I'd like to thank all of you for being here with us today. It has been a joy to have your presence here, see your faces, to hear your voices. You guys outdid yourselves today. Thank you. Thanks to all the volunteers that helped with this, to put this together, to have a fellowship ready for us and back. To AJ up there in the booth. To Linda and Joe for being here. There will be prayer chaplains available. Excuse me, one is usually up here in the front of the sanctuary, one near the back or out in the hall. For anyone who would like to request personal prayer today, they will be available for you. We will gather for fellowship in our fellowship hall at the rear of the church. If anyone would like to join us, there's always coffee, conversation, and maybe a nibble or two along the way. I know there's something today because I saw it, so I won't tell you what it is. You got to come back and find out. With that, let's form our circle for our closing prayer, please. Let's take just a second. Oops. Yeah, I'm going to say we'll take another second. So once again, let's just connect with one another in this circle of love, with spirit and with the joy of the day. And we are grateful for having had this opportunity today to be together, to experience the love, the friendship, and the messages that we have to share with one another. What's more, we can take those messages and love and spread it to all who we come across each and every day of our lives. If you have a prayer request for someone, if you would like, please speak that name or that phrase into the circle at this time. We release these prayers to the universe and to Spirit without attaching any outcome, knowing that God's grace and blessing will provide the best possible outcome in all experiences for all people. With that, we will close with our prayer of protection, which is on the screen together. Light of God surrounds us, the love of God in full.